one of the Goodreads comments quoted that section, and they said, it was along the lines of like, book was mid, but this line had me bricked up. Hey, my name is Kaylee. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. This is Read Rant Review, where, you guessed it, I read books and I do rant reviews. Today we are talking about the book Painted Scars by Neva Altaj, I think is how you say her name. I am so sorry if I'm slaughtering it. This book was published in 2022 and currently on Goodreads it is sitting at a 3.75 with a little over 88,000 ratings. This is a mafia romance. I'll give you some of the tropes real quick and then I'll tell you what I think is different about it. So the tropes are a disabled hero, a fake marriage, age gap, opposites attract, and a possessive/jealous hero. I say this is different because the main male character is super not a horrible person to the main female character, if that makes sense. Like there's no threatening, there's no bad vibes between the two of them. He's like incredibly supportive and kind from the jump. He's just obviously a very violent man during his job, which is, in my opinion, I like that. I don't want to have a main female character that I'm like afraid for, you know? So I really enjoyed this book where it was like you still had the crime elements and like the mafia type elements to it, but like it was a relatively healthy and good relationship otherwise, minus the forced marriage stuff. You know what I'm saying. So that's the book that we're going to talk about today. So in my videos, I do a beat by beat, chapter by chapter breakdown of the book while I do my makeup. We have a good time. It's a little gossipy sesh. So with that being said, this review will contain all of the spoilers. This review is not for the author. It's not for friends, fans, family stans, anything of the like. This review is for fellow readers. It's also not formal in any way. I am just here gossiping and having a good time, okay? And then the third disclaimer that I like to provide is a trigger or content warning. The author, I think, gave a really good one. I'll just read you what they have. Please be aware that this book contains content that may trigger certain audiences. There's domestic violence, mentions of abuse, and graphic descriptions of violence and torture. None occur between the hero or heroine. Is there anything else I would like to add to that? The main female character has a little bit of PTSD from a guy trying to force himself on her. I would say that's like a main through line through the book that gets referenced and talked about. So there's some very good depictions of PTSD from such an event, but it could be triggering. So I want you to have the heads up on that. And then I'm not going to talk about any of the mafia super violent stuff because I would like this video to remain monetized. So it is interesting. I thought it was cool. If you want to read that, you're more than welcome to. This book is on Kindle Unlimited. Good mind-numbing mafia read that doesn't make me feel icky at the end of it, which is all I really ask for. I just want a mind-numbing good time, and this book was perfect for that. With that being said, I'll go ahead and dive right in. The only other housekeeping note is if you're watching this on YouTube, I post all my videos on Spotify. I have the link in the description box below if that's easier for you. And if you're on Spotify listening or watching this, hey, good to see you guys. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. So in our prologue, our main male character, his name is Roman. He wakes up in a hospital bed. He hears the beeping and he hears a couple voices. They sound kind of familiar, but he can't really pinpoint who exactly it is. And they're talking about, will he live? Yes, unfortunately. The wounds on his chest were not that bad. They patched him up. We can always try again. Pin it on the Italians again. Too risky. People are loyal to the boss. Anyone suspects me and I'll end up in a ditch. Well, there might be a silver lining. The shrapnel shattered his knee. So, the doctor said he won't be able to walk again. If someone more capable comes into the picture, people, no matter how loyal, will hardly stand behind a boss who's in a wheelchair when presented with a better option. Well, I guess we did well then after all. There are two sets of steps leaving, and then a door closes. And I would like to make it clear too, they don't say the word boss, they say, I think it's Pakhan or whatever. There's a lot of obviously Russian words that are used in this. The author has a wonderful author's note where they give you definitions of the words that are used and the purpose of them and the usage and whatnot. And it is like actually very, very helpful in understanding what I was reading, but I can understand the word. That doesn't mean that I can pronounce the word. So I'm just going to give you like the translated version of these words, okay? In chapter 1, it's 3 months later, and Roman is in a wheelchair. The knee damage that he received from the shrapnel is pretty much like a car bombing gone wrong. They hit the button just a smidge too early, so it didn't unalive him. It just like shattered his kneecap, I guess. So 3 months later, he's in a wheelchair and he's still trying to manage the mafia, right? He's the mafia boss, but it's kind of hard to do when you're cooped up in a room doing physical therapy, trying to heal, and you can't really get around. And I thought the book did like such an interesting job of addressing that type of life-changing event, life-changing circumstance. So beyond that, a guy named Samuel Gray embezzled $3 million from Roman. He was their real estate broker manager dude, and he used $3 million to buy a new warehouse or something and ended up falling for some guy's Ponzi scheme. And so the money is not there anymore. And so Roman's response when Maxim, his right-hand man, tells him this, Roman says, "Unalive the dude. Set an example. I don't give an F. Just deal with it." Maxim says, "I think I have a better idea, actually. People are starting to talk, Roman. We need a distraction and fast, and I think Gray can provide that distraction." They're starting to question his ability to be the mafia boss. So after Maxim tells him this, "And do you share their opinion? Do not insult me, Roman. You know I've always stood by you. I'll keep doing so, even if I don't think that you're the most capable boss that the Bratva has ever had. You've been holed up here for 3 months. You haven't been to our clubs to check on operations, like you did at least once a month before the explosion, and you haven't even been seen with a woman. So the status of my sex life is a better indicator of my ability to run the Bratva than the fact we doubled our profit in the last 2 months. People need to feel stability, Roman. They still remember how your father took over the previous boss's place and the chaos that followed. The Bratva lost more than 50 people to internal skirmishes, and the business was devastated. They need to know that it won't happen again. A wife means that there will be an heir who will be ready to take over your place when the time comes, without internal war or people dying. I won't tie myself to some random woman for life just to pacify our ranks. Let me show you something." Maxim takes out his phone and starts scrolling. "My daughter went to school with Samuel's daughter. They weren't close friends or anything, but they hung out together often, and I remember her showing me the videos that she took. I asked her to send me one of them last night when I heard about what Samuel Gray did." And you're thinking, and so is Roman. He was like, "Why are you showing me videos of a teenage girl, you weirdo?" It turns out the video is actually a couple years old. Samuel's daughter is now 24 years old. She just graduated I think they're in Chicago. She just graduated the Chicago Art Institute. She's like one of the most popular artists of her age. And this video, though, just gets the point across that she is a wonderful actress. The video is her and her friends in a circle, and they keep calling out random celebrities or people they know. And Nina, our main female character, sits there. She closes her eyes. She like channels it, talks about some of the personality traits. And then when she opens her eyes, she's like a whole other person. So the point being, she doesn't need to be your wife. She can just play the role. And Samuel owes us money, so we have an obligation. Marry her as a cover-up, because it's going to be at least 6 months, according to Roman's physical therapist, for him to be able to use a cane, right? He's still wheelchair-bound. He's tries to use crutches sometimes around the house, but most of the time he can't even stand on his leg. Like, he can't bear any weight on it at all. So hopefully in 6 months, right, we'll have our fake marriage for 6 months, and then he'll be able to walk again, and then that will be reassuring to his people. The only thing that I disliked about this immediately off the bat was that this book does the whole like multi-POV in one chapter thing. I'm like, just give me a new chapter per person, please. For the love of God. That's like one of my least favorite things. We go to Nina's perspective, and she got called home, right? She has her own apartment across town, and she's been doing her own thing. But she got called home by her father saying that it was urgent, right? So she rushes inside. Her mother is very, very judgmental. We get this established very, very early on. Her mom is like, "Ew, oh my God, you have a nose ring? Ew, oh my God, your hair is dyed pitch black. Like, why don't you go blonde?" Like that sort of thing. Like, both books had actually like very problematic mother figures. And I don't know, maybe it's just the whole mafia thing, like since we already know kind of a default personality for the fathers, that the moms had to be the ones that were like ableist and just very pretentious D-bags, but it felt very shallow and like mommy issues coded, if you know what I mean. Anyway, so it was a really long way of me saying she's going home to see her father, and her mom's like, WTF, dude. Her father cuts to the chase pretty quickly, though, of like, "Hey, I done goofed. I know, honey, you think that I'm just in real estate, but actually I'm pretty much a real estate agent for the Russian mafia, and, you know, I owe them $3 million. She's like, oh, Jesus Christ. You know, the dad says, hey, you know, he just needs a wife for 6 months. It's just a wife on paper, and I don't know what for exactly. I don't know what's going on. You don't question these people. So I need you to step it up, or I'm literally going to get unalived. Obviously, she doesn't have a choice. So she's like, okay, Dad, I guess, like, I want some time to think about it, though. Like, this is crazy, life-changing stuff. Like, I'll do it, but I don't know. I need time. He says, sorry, honey, actually, we have to go there and meet them at this restaurant in like an hour. Good God. I'm just like, dude, can you even freaking imagine? So in chapter 2, cut to the restaurant. Roman and Maxim are there. She comes inside and she is very surprised. Her father came with her, but he was forced to stay outside. She goes in and she's very surprised at Roman's age, because she thought he was like gonna be 80 years old or something, and this is gonna be weird, but no, he's actually 35. Actually kind of cute. You know what I mean? And she also wasn't expecting the whole wheelchair thing, but that doesn't bother her. So they're having this conversation. This is what the deal is. This is what's expected of you. He says, we need to make some things clear, Miss Gray. I don't need a wife just on paper. If anyone suspects that we're not crazy in love and this marriage is a sham, your father is dead, and you'll be joining him. She blinks and looks at me with confusion clearly shown on her face. You expect us to live together for 6 months? Of course. How else would people believe in the marriage? The other thing I have in my note, so from Roman's perspective when he first sees her, it's very much like the you know, like the ooh, so tiny thing. I hate that so much in these books. Both of the books that I've read so far, I guess actually even the third one, is that way, where it's like they just get thrown around and like picked up randomly. It's just, and it gets talked about how tiny and small they are the whole time, you know? I don't know, man. And how the guys are all like 6'4" and crazy huge. Just not, personally not a fan. And yeah, I put on more blush. Am I blush blind? Probably. But I also feel like I have to do stage makeup with all of these cameras. So I have to like, it has to look kind of extreme for it to even really show on camera properly. Anyway, she realizes like, oh wow, this is actually going to be kind of a crazy situation for me. I don't know how I feel about this, but obviously I don't have a choice. So I'm just going to have to put on the whole actress vibe. And that Saturday, there is a party. And that's where they're going to quote unquote meet for the first time. She's going to go to said party with her father. Her and Roman are going to hit it off. Then they're going to spend the rest of the weekend locked in his bedroom for 2 whole days, being infatuated with each other. And then they'll get married. And it'll be this whole whirlwind love story thing. He's fine with her doing whatever she wants in those 2 days. He'll be working anyway, and explicitly says that he will not force anything upon her, which is very reassuring and positive in these types of stories. The bar is literally in hell. I acknowledge that, but I was still happy. Hearing that after a few weeks of playing this like infatuation role, they'll get married and then do the whole marriage thing for the rest of the time being. She leaves the restaurant, runs into her father. She's a little distraught, understandably so, about the information that she found out about, and tells her father, you cannot tell mom. Like, nobody can know what's going on. Nobody can know that this is fake, or like we will literally die. So get it together, Dad. In chapter 3, she's at the mall and she is trying to find a dress for this party, and really, really struggling to do so because she's 5 foot tall, to be exact. What is the Sabrina Carpenter quote? 5 feet to be exact. So she's 5 feet to be exact. So she has problems finding clothes that fit her. And so she's at this, like, you know, I assume it's like Dillard's or something like that. Obviously, they're not going to name drop. But she's at this store trying on these dresses. Nothing is working for her whatsoever. She's been in there for like an hour, and she starts getting phone calls from a number that she doesn't have saved. She ignores it until it calls like 3 times. When she finally picks up on it, it's Roman, and he says, hey, how's everything going? She says, don't worry, I'm coming to the party tonight. He says, are you? Because Maxim's following you, and he said that you've been stuck in the changing room for an hour. She's like, WTF, you have people following me? And he's like, yeah, I didn't want you to run away. Okay, all right, understandable, I guess. In my note, I said, this is the first instance of the whole okay that happens, where he tells her to meet with Maxim, and then Maxim takes her up to the most expensive boutique. Obviously, Roman's paying for it. She gets a dress, she gets like 3 pairs of shoes, a new clutch, and some other things. And it's just the whole being spoiled thing. You know, like this skit from like, oh my god, it had to have been like 10 years ago. It was Quinta Brunson. They were at the movie theater, and her boyfriend just kept rattling off. It's like, I think it was like Girl Who's Never Been on a Nice Date Before. And he was like, I'll get a large soda, I'll get a popcorn, get some Reese's Pieces. And she's like, okay, He's got money. It's so funny. Anyway, the good old days of YouTube. That's what I felt like. And so anytime I get that feeling, like people get spoiled, I just think of Quinta. She is late getting to the party that night, and Roman is there, and he's just thinking, I returned to the conversation around the table, doing my best to fake interest. I was never a fan of big gatherings, fake people with fake smiles, pretending they are oh so happy to see you, while secretly they wish for your demise. I look around the table and I wonder which one of them set up the bomb that up my life. It wasn't the Italians, of that I'm sure. This device was planted under my car, and if it were the Italians, they'd have rigged the whole warehouse. I was lucky that the bastard got trigger happy and hit the remote a few seconds before I was inside. Only a handful of people knew my schedule for that day, and some of them are sitting at this very table. So the guys are being very gross, and they're talking about women in like a very gross way that Roman already doesn't like, but especially doesn't like when Nina walks in with her father and they start saying how hot she is. And they're like, oh, that can't be Samuel's wife, like da-da-da-da-da, like just, you know what I mean, being gross locker room talk, you know? And so he kicks them out of the table. His uncle, Leonid, who has a little bit of sass when he gets up, and Roman clocks it. He's not very happy with it because really he's pretty sure that his uncle is the one that tried to unalive him. But he gets up, he leaves, and Roman is just checking Nina out from across the room, and he is very impressed. He's very impressed with what he sees. She's super hot, she's super tiny, she's so cute. So we cut to her perspective, and she is also just entranced with how hot he is. And hey, honestly, break. This type of insta love I don't mind quite so much in an arranged marriage situation, because I almost would rather it be maybe not insta love, but insta attraction, because then it doesn't feel quite as icky, which I know that's kind of like arranged marriages inherently are icky. Yeah, I get it. But it makes me feel less bad to consume this material when it's like a mutual attraction thing. I don't know. That probably sounds like really bad to say. We cut to Nina's perspective though, and she is like checking him out too. She thinks he's super, super handsome, and she doesn't mind the wheelchair, like I said earlier. Without breaking eye contact, he reaches for the empty chair at his side, moves it closer to him, and nods toward it. I should probably go there, but my legs are rooted to the spot. Finally, one of the guys that's in the conversation with her and her father, right? She's in like this little group of a couple dudes. He's like, hey, the boss guy's calling you over there. You probably shouldn't leave him waiting. So she goes, sits down next to him. Nina gives him a hard time. She's like, oh, that's how easy it is for you? You just nod and the women appear? He's like, yeah, honestly, it kind of is. He says, tell me, Nina, if there wasn't this deal between us, would you have come when I nodded? He asks. Nope. I don't expect him to ask me to elaborate, but he does. And his question surprises me. Why not? Is it because of the wheelchair? He says it conversationally, but there's a hidden undertone that I can't quite define. I abandon watching the crowd and look at him right in the eyes. It's because I'm not a poodle, Mr. Petrov. He laughs and takes another sip of his drink, shaking his head. What happened? I nod toward his legs. You don't beat around the bush, do you, Nina? Do you want me to? It was a car bomb. Shrapnel hit my right knee and shattered it. Does it hurt? Like a bitch. You have money. I'm sure there's some surgery that would help. Well, it looks like there are things no amount of money can buy. He goes on to say, though, that he Googled her and that he saw her artwork, and he was very surprised that somebody so beautiful can make such dark pieces of work. She says, oh, you didn't like it? He says, no, I loved it. I was just surprised. Okay. He then goes on to ask if he can get a commission. She says she doesn't do them. He says, how about a trade then? You paint something for me and I give you something you want. Anything? Money, jewelry, anything you want. I want an answer to a question. Is that an option as well? Depends on the question. In that case, I'll have to decline, Mr. Petrov. You drive a hard bargain, Miss Gray. He leans his head in and whispers in my ear. Ask. Why do you need a temporary wife, Roman? You're handsome, rich, powerful. Like, I'm sure there's dozens of women who would be happy to marry you. Why waste $3 million when you could get a wife for free? Because I don't want a permanent one, and current business situation requires me to have a wife for the next 6 months. Why 6 months? Well, that's a second question. You only bargained for one. Hey. It's kind of hot. So if you're thinking to yourself, okay, so what is this commission that he wants? I'm going to let you take a guess. I'm going to give you like 5 seconds to think about what is the most predictable thing that a freaking guy would ask for in this situation. Dun, 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 dun. A nude self-portrait. Say it with me, everyone. A nude self-portrait. She obviously doesn't really have any room to disagree with that request, so continues their flirty banter back and forth. And it gets to a point where he says, are you ready? Ready For what? To show me how good of an actress you really are. And then he kisses her. She kisses him back. It's a lot of making out. It's very heavy. Like, she gets swept up in it immediately. She loves it. He loves it. She is like so into it. She ends up knocking over a glass and spilling wine all over her shoes and shattering it. And so now everybody's staring at them like... Like, what in the hell? He pulls away. He asks for her foot, takes off her shoe, wipes off the wine from it with a napkin. It's very caretakery and cute. And then he says, all right, I think we did our part. It's time to go. Go tell your father that you're coming home with me and make sure that a couple of people hear you say it. She gets outside, hops in his truck. Obviously, he's not driving. His driver drives them home. And she expected him to have a big house, right? Obviously he's rich. What she was not expecting was how crazy of a mansion that it actually is, and that there's security everywhere. There's security, there's cameras, there's obviously alarm system, all sorts of things. So when they pull up, she says, do you have cameras inside as well? If you want people to trust you and stay loyal, you have to reciprocate. Placing the cameras inside would mean that I don't trust my men. The car stops in front of the house, and Maxim opens the door for me while the driver goes to the trunk to take out Roman's wheelchair. I exit the car and look over the building. It's only 2 stories high, but it expands at least 50 yards on each side. The thing is gigantic. You like it? No. Why? I'm not a fan of large things, I mumble. And I would just like to call out the subtle foreshadowing here from both of them. It's actually pretty well done. So I guess it's not really foreshadowing if I'm calling it out to you now. But just so you know, that is actually relevant details and conversations. And this was another one of those instances where I felt like I wasn't getting my time wasted constantly. When they go inside, the door greeter guy is very, very surprised to see that Roman has a woman with him. That's not really a thing, especially since the accident. And nobody knows of their arrangement or that this is like a fake marriage or fake thing other than Maxim, obviously, a woman who we're about to meet. So Roman asks the door guy, is Varya still awake? Yeah, I think she's in the kitchen. Tell her I'm back. Have her instruct one of the girls to prepare a quick dinner, and then she can go to bed. And tell the staff to make sure they stay out of the east wing. I don't want anyone there unless I call for them. For tonight, a mysterious smile forms on Roman's lips. No, tell them it's until further notice. I'll ring the kitchen when we're ready for dinner. The man nods and turns to leave, but not before he glances in my direction with interest. Judging by his facial expression and the way that his eyes widened after Roman's remark, the gossip is about to begin. Cut to, she gets a little bit of a tour of the east wing where he lives, right? So there's the guest room, the kitchen, the living room, his bedroom, etc., all kinds of space. He's telling her all about it, and she says, it feels strange being here in his space. I'm going to be living here for the next 6 months with him. Somehow it all seemed unreal until right this moment, as if everything was happening to someone else. But now, with me sitting on his sofa in his house, it finally hits me. This is really happening. I should be fucking scared. Something must be very wrong with me because I feel the anxiety and I'm nervous, but there's no fear. I look up to meet the eyes of the head of the Russian criminal underworld, the man who promised to kill me if I fail to play my part in his strange scheme. And that flock of butterflies explodes in my stomach again. Dear God, I need to have my head checked because instead of being afraid like a normal person, I'm attracted to him. So she asked Roman, like, what now? And he says, well, we'll get dinner delivered and then you can go and you can go to sleep or you can do whatever you want. So she's like, well, how about we put on a show for whoever comes up here? Excuse me. She is like all into this dude, or at least committing to the bit, in the very least committing to the bit here. When they call up for dinner, she ends up like straddling his lap on his wheelchair. She takes her hair down. He's like kisses her neck and stuff and kind of pretends that they're like, about to get into doing other things. The girl comes in, drops off the food, freaks out because she supposedly caught them doing stuff, and then rushes out of the room. Very obvious, again, that there's going to be gossip galore, which is the whole point here. The second that the lady leaves, she hops off of his wheelchair and they kind of go about their business, and she goes to get ready for bed, borrows a shirt from him, takes a shower, gets comfortable, etc. Nothing too crazy here, other than the fact that like that night she is unable to sleep because she is so turned on by what happened. She's so turned on by the idea of Roman and doing stuff with Roman. It's so goofy. Chapter 4, Roman wakes up to a phone call from his uncle Leonid. He notes that his uncle should not be up at this time of day. Like, dude usually wakes up super, super late. It's just very, very clear that there's a lot of tension between the two men. I hate that man, and I can't risk throwing him out, no matter how much I want to. Leonid knows too much, and I need him here, where I can keep my eye on him the whole time. I reach for the crutches, leaning on the nightstand, place them on either side of me, and hoist myself up. Putting the crutches under my armpits, I take a deep breath and make the first few painfully slow steps. My knee is usually stiff in the mornings, but it's much better than it was a month ago. All those hours of physical therapy are finally paying off, but I'm a long way away from getting rid of the damn wheelchair. I hate that damn thing, but I still have days when the pain is too strong and I can't even bear to move my right leg at all. Goes on to reflect about this knee pain and about how he's pissed off and like knows that it was probably one of his family members. Again, the insinuation or the assumption being that it was Leonid. He just doesn't have any proof. So he goes out into the kitchen. Nina is there. She's digging through it, trying to find some breakfast or whatever. And he says, "Anything interesting in that fridge?" She jumps with a startled yelp, turns around, sees him at his full height because he is on crutches, and starts freaking out. She flinches and takes a step back. Bumping into the fridge, her breath quickens, becoming shallow, like she can't take in enough air and her hands are slightly trembling. She's having a panic attack. I have no idea what triggered it, but she's terrified of something, and I'm pretty sure that something is me. It makes no sense. Just a few hours earlier, I was holding her in my lap, and she didn't look scared at all. "Roman, I need you to sit down, please." I don't see the sense in her request, but I take 2 steps towards the dining table, pull out the chair, and sit down. Nina stays rooted in the spot in front of the fridge, but at least her breathing seems to be coming under control. A stray thought crosses my mind, something she said when we arrived. I remember it clearly now, and I don't like what it implies. "You said something last night that I need you to explain what you meant by it." "What exactly?" "What did you mean by 'I'm not a fan of large things'?" She blinks, and instead of answering, she turns on her heel and runs into her room. The door closes with a bang. At the same time, my realization settles in, and the anger starts boiling in my stomach. Someone hurt her, and for her to react this way, it must have been really bad. From Nina's perspective, she ran into her room because she's embarrassed about her reaction. He probably thinks that I'm crazy. God, even after 2 years, I'm still fucked in the head. It was getting better. I came to a point where I was able to be in the company of huge men without freaking out. I could even hold a normal conversation as long as they didn't touch me. Yes, most people, especially men, are taller than me, but most of them don't trigger a panic attack. I only react to men who are as tall as Brian had been and who have significant muscle mass. Roman looks nothing like Brian, who was blonde and had a surfer look about him, but they're of similar height and build. Maybe if I was warned in some way or I knew what to expect, I wouldn't have reacted so extremely, but I was still sleepy, and with Roman suddenly towering over me, I just flipped. And my note says that this is genuinely such like good representation of these types of reactions to situations or to like ongoing situations in trauma, because it's been 2 years and she still reacts that way. It's been a long time, and it's still something that she is like actively dealing with and has dealt with for quite a while, which I feel like is a rarity for these books, honestly, where usually whatever the traumatic thing is that happens to the main female character happens during the relationship with the guy, and so then it's like instantly fixed because then he goes and protects her or like fixes the issue, and then everything's all hunky-dory and she's cured of any trauma. I feel like that's how most mafia books go, which is where I have problems with, because it's just gross to me to treat such things like that. And so in this one, I don't know, it was interesting. So anyway, she finally gets out of the room and has dinner with Roman and makes the statement that like he's not the one she's scared of. So she sits right next to him at the dining room table. They have a little bit of chit chat back and forth before he has to go to work. He has to go take care of some things that evening. And she asks about his wheelchair use, and if he uses crutches, then like why doesn't he use his crutches more? Why does he stay in the wheelchair around other people? And he says nobody knows about the crutches. It's only his physical therapist, Varya, Maxim, and then now Nina. So he says, keep it a secret. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about my reasoning, which feels like starting to become a very common response from this guy. So in chapter 5, he's in his office talking to Maxim, and there's more talk about how they don't trust Leonid. Maxim is like, if we don't trust him, if you think that it's him, or if you have this thing, why not just go get the information out of him, like go torture it out of him? And he says, well, what if it's not? Then now what? Now all the men are scared and we lose the trust that we've built with the family, and it's just super dramatic. Like we need concrete evidence. We need to bug his room. AKA we need to place like a listening device or a camera or something in there so that we can catch him talking about it or planning something else, so then we're justified in our action. They go back and forth about maybe some house people that they could get to go into his room. like maybe a house cleaner or somebody delivering food or something to get in there. And really nobody would work. They either gossip too much or maybe they can't be trusted either. Like they might be in on it or something. So then the idea becomes, okay, well, what about Nina? She's new here. She could maybe just pretend to be airhead and just accidentally wander into his room one day if she's like unfamiliar with this space. So that's exactly what Roman does. They don't really have much of a choice. He goes back later that night and he tells Nina, he's like, hey, I need you to do something for me while you're here. So he explains this whole listening device thing, right? That's what she'll need to do for him. That brings us to the second thing that we need to discuss, and it concerns how people who live and work here perceive you. I need you to appear, let's say, shallow. You mean stupid? Not exactly. What I mean is that when people see you entering a room, that they aren't wary or suspicious. I want them to secretly roll their eyes and not notice what you're doing because they assume you're harmless. Okay, you definitely mean stupid. Okay, I'll need a few minutes. She leans back into the cushions, throws her head back, and with her face turned up toward the ceiling, she closes her eyes and stays like that for a few moments and then starts speaking. Shallow. Harmless, a little bit stupid, crazy in love with you, needs access to every part of the house. Let's see, who am I? Well, Roman's trophy wife, of course. I'm pretty, elegant, and extremely snobbish. I love wearing expensive clothes, just the best labels. I'm not really into dresses unless the occasion requires it. I much prefer designer jeans paired with silky blouses, and heels are a must. She pauses, opens her eyes, and turns toward me. Are heels a must, do you think? She scrunches her tiny nose. Of course they are. Damn it, I hate wearing heels. She closes her eyes again and continues. The heels are a must, and I have dozens of them. Roman loves when I wear them. He says that they make my butt look amazing. I'm also self-conscious about my height, and wearing heels all the time helps me forget about how short I am. My favorite pastime is shopping. I buy a ton of clothes. My husband has to allocate one driver specifically for me and my shopping sprees. Another pause, and she turns toward me again. Roman, I'll need funds to support her addiction with clothes. She's an impulse buyer. You'll get anything you need. I laugh. She's completely nuts. My husband is crazy about me, and he allows me to do whatever I want in the house, like rearrange furniture, so the vibe of the house works better with the earth vibrations. The house feels terribly cold, so I buy a bunch of indoor plants and I spread them everywhere. I also tour every single room because I want to make sure unobstructed energy flows, so I rearrange paintings and mirrors. I also hate the dining room table. It's so overstated, and I decide to swap it with this sleek glass one that I found in an interior design magazine. Another pause. This woman's expensive, Roman. I sure hope you know what you're getting yourself into. I'll manage. They continue to have a little bit of back and forth about this character that she's developing, and it's a little flirty, it's a little cute. And then he says, do you often do this? Create different personalities and slide into them? I did when I was a kid. It was a game. My mom hated it. Imagine having your daughter come down one morning and reject breakfast, declaring that she's been a vegetarian for years when she just had ham and eggs for dinner the previous day. Would you mind if I go take a nap? I didn't sleep well last night. She takes her nap. When she comes up for dinner, Varya is there, and she clocks immediately that this woman means a lot to Roman, and it feels like meeting his mother. They tell her the plan that they'll marry in a few weeks, and Varya says, no, that needs to happen a lot sooner. You can't introduce her to your men as your lover. Like, they're not going to take her serious. Like, the plan's not going to work if you do that. Like, you need to be married ASAP. So that's what they'll do. Roman calls Maxim, says, hey, we're doing this tomorrow afternoon. Make it happen. Oh my God. Obviously, Nina is a little bit freaked out about this development, but doesn't have much of a choice. But when the same worker who came last night and caught her straddling him on his wheelchair, she's going to come back later that night to deliver some other things, and now she needs to catch them even more in the act. So they decide that they're going to go into Roman's bedroom, and she says, excuse me? There won't be any sex involved, but Valentina will be bringing dinner to my room, and you're going to be there. In your room? In my bed, Nina. Oh my God. They go their separate ways to go shower, kind of get ready. She puts on some lingerie. They meet back in the kitchen. He's on his crutches again. He's tall. She's a little freaked out about it. I'm sorry, she whispers. It's not you, Roman. I know. And then he picks her. Oh my God. I guess he leans one hip over, or he stands on one leg and he's able to pick her up and plop her onto the counter. And then he says, I'm going to kill him. It's going to be slow and it's going to be painful. Just give me his name. No. I'm not asking. Give me his fucking name. I said, no, I'm not making anyone a murderer. It's too late for that, Nina. the name. Leave it. I'm not telling you. Just leave it. Damn it. I take a deep breath and try to bottle up the need to smash my hand into something. Okay, I'll leave it for now, but you're just delaying the inevitable. So then he says, I'll call down to the kitchen and just have Varya come up and she'll just leave the tray at the door. Like, I'm not making you do this. Like, you're not going to lay in bed with me. Like, you're not ready. Like, you're not comfortable with that. It's fine. Like, I'll just, let me fix it. And she says, no, seriously, like, it's fine. You know, she climbs into bed, pulls back the sheets. She's like, just get in, please. Like, it's not like that. I'm fine. Making sure that there's enough space between us, I lie down, expecting her to stay back. Instead, she throws her leg around me and climbs on top, lowering her head to place it on my chest. I barely breathe, trying my best not to even move a muscle, afraid of spooking her. We stay like that for a few moments, me lying still with her sprawled over my chest. Put your arms around me. I do as she says. I watch for any sign of distress, but there isn't any. Is this okay? I rasp. Yep, I just need to give you a few pointers, all right? No holding my wrists or squeezing my neck. And also no pinning me down with your body. And I feel the cold rush down my spine. We go to Nina's perspective. The moment that the words leave my mouth, Roman goes still under me, and I hate speaking about this, but I had to tell him. I don't want to risk freaking out on him if he unknowingly did one of those things. He just lies there, and I hear his heartbeat quicken under my ear, and he removes his arms from my back. He says, go back to your room, little one. We are not doing this. It's okay, Roman. Like, no, you've been hurt. Like, get out of here, blah, blah, blah. She's like, no, it's not like that. Like, she says, you're not making me do anything, and I've had sex after. I have no problem with being in the same bed as you. I won't freak out if you're holding me or from being close to you. It never came to that. He never got to hurt me in that way. I smashed his laptop in his head before he managed to do anything. You hit his head with a laptop? Twice. I broke his nose with the second blow and ran away. It still fucked my head though, and I can't control reactions sometimes, but it has nothing to do with you. Are you sure? I need you to be sure, Nina. I'm sure. And it's just cute, right? That's what I mean when I say that this is like handled well, where it's this continuing like ongoing dialogue between the two of them of what she's comfortable with and him like constantly checking in on her, and I don't know, kind of like an open acknowledgement about these types of situations in ongoing uncomfortableness with things. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, she ends up straddling him like entirely, and like actually they end up making out. Escalates pretty quickly, and the worker comes in, drops the tray, has the whole reaction that they intended for the gossip to spread, and then she hops on down and just says, all right, well, I'm gonna go to bed in my room. I'll see you in the morning. It's very hot and cold. It's very back and forth, but he's gonna take her shopping the following day, but they have to make a pit stop. The only thing to note is this poor guy is in so much pain all of the time. Like, he is constantly just aching. He goes to his work, and this is the part where his chapters have very, very specific, like, yeah, we're running things, and this is the chaos that happened last night, and our driver was drunk while delivering some of our product, and we got busted, and now we have to redo our transportation lines and like replan it and other stuff like that, where it is cool objectively, like you're reading like a whole crime thing. The author did a really good job of character depth and job depth for him, I feel like, more so than other mafia books that I've read before. Obviously, I'm just not detailing it. Yeah, I feel like a lot of these books skim over that side and just focus on the side of the broody, violent main male character. They don't actually talk about actual mafia stuff that happens. This felt like a true crime read. Anyway, it ends up taking a really, really long time. When we finally get back to the car, Dimitri, one of his bodyguards, I think that's the lead of his security, opens the door for me, and I see Nina. I stop mid-move. She's sitting cross-legged in the back seat, closed-eyed. On the phone in her lap is a video playing, showing a woman in the same pose muttering some new age nonsense while Nina is speaking along. She looks ridiculous. What are you doing? Purging negative vibrations and channeling positive energy into my chakra points. Vova here, it's the driver, said that he didn't mind. I turn my head to look at our driver, and he's staring straight ahead, feigning composure, but I can see it on his face. He's barely managing not to burst out laughing. Do you want to try it, honey? It does wonders for releasing stress, Nina says, sounding completely serious, but I can see a twinkle of mischief in her eyes. The rest of the chapter, they go to the mall. It's very cute. He buys her a bunch of clothes and spoils her. They go to the art supply store so she can continue painting, get a bunch of stuff there, and then he goes and runs off to buy her a wedding ring, right? Secretly. Not so secretly, runs off to go and buy her a wedding ring while she goes to the art supply store with Dimitri, the bodyguard. Cut to chapter 7. They come home to sign the marriage license, and it is very, very anticlimactic. Varya and Maxim are the witnesses, and then the priest guy leaves, and Roman has to go to work, and now Nina is there just bored out of her mind trying to figure out what to do. Maybe I should order some items and start redecorating the house as planned. Maybe some lamps. I sprawl onto the sofa and close my eyes. Lamps. I love lamps. The bigger the better. Gold with big black lampshades and tresses, I mumbled to myself. They'll bring in the sophisticated look, so I'll put them everywhere. The staff are gonna hate those things. They're hell to dust, and no lamps. I hear Roman's deep voice coming from directly above me, but I just smile, continuing, keeping my eyes closed. She's laying on the couch. I don't think I said that. She was just laying on the couch board, mumbling these things to herself. And my husband hates my lamps, but he has zero interior design knowledge. And because he's so crazy about me, he decides to leave my lamps in peace. All 14 of them. I open my eyes and see Roman bending over me. His eyes narrowed. He's in his wheelchair again. Strange. He usually uses crutches when he's in his suite. Decided to finally get out of your cave, I see. I cock an eyebrow. You should get dressed. We're going down to dinner in 30 minutes. Slutty, serious, or something in the middle? Middle will work. Damn, I wished you picked slutty. The banter is objectively, like, pretty cute. In the book, I really did like the little flirtiness that was happening between the characters. It felt not forced and gross. You know what I mean? It felt like genuinely she was just being a dork and he was just a grumpy guy that was, like, starting to see the sunshine. Anyway, we're in Roman's perspective for the rest of the chapter. They go downstairs to dinner. He introduces her to his men, and they're all pretty surprised by it. Like, nobody was expecting this, introducing her as his wife. It's kind of weird, so the dinner is unusually quiet and a little bit awkward, but Nina is very good at pretending, almost disturbingly good. I was expecting her to overdo it, act out too much, giggle. There's none of that. She leans closer between bites to ask something and touches my hand every now and then. Everything seems so genuine that even I, knowing it's all for show, find it hard to believe that it's an act. Chapter 8, it's the following day, and it's just very, very painful day for Roman. Like, he can't get out of bed type of painful. And when he finally does, he's missed a couple of meetings, and he goes straight to the kitchen to pop some painkillers that he doesn't normally take unless it is, like, horrifically bad. So he takes 3 of them, cancels his meetings and plans, and she forces him to lay on the couch with her, right? She goes and gets some pillows, throws it under his leg, and then puts his head on her lap, and she, like, plays with his hair, and they watch movies, right? Until he falls asleep because of the painkillers that he took. It's just a little cutesy relationship comfort building chapter, and it's very cute. Varya comes up at some point to bring them some snacks, and she is pleasantly surprised, I guess would be the word, at their situation, at them cuddling and watching movies together. Obviously, she loves Roman as her own, and so she's very, very happy to see him happy and comfortable with a woman. When he finally wakes up from all of his, pain medication-induced nap, he's like, okay, well, I do actually have to get some work done. So he's gonna go down to his office, and he invites Nina to come along with him so that he can give her a tour of the rest of the house. He points out the wings where some of his men live, including Leonid. He shows where his office is, the other offices, there's like a lounge area and all sorts of things. But while he's also giving her this tour, he's giving her a rundown of each of his workers and what they do for him. One of them being Mikhail, who has an eye patch. He is very, very badly scarred and injured, and he doesn't like people to touch him. He's known as the Butcher, is the go-to torture guy. He's the love interest in book number 2. He's such again, the juxtaposition of these guys of, like, the super sweet teddy bear with their women and then being this completely brutal, horrible graphic scenes when they're talking about the mafia stuff is, I like it. I think it's a good dichotomy. Like, I think it's very interesting. He also goes on to explain Varya's position. She was a housekeeper for the old boss. When I took over, I set her up for life, so she wouldn't need to work anymore. She didn't want to leave, though. It still doesn't. So I let her run the house. It makes her happy. She doesn't want to leave you mean? Yes. I see it in her eyes. She wants to ask more, but she doesn't, and I don't volunteer. Some things are better left unsaid. And then at the very end of the tour, she asks if she can go to the kitchen. He's a little reluctant about it, and she finds out why when they finally get there, because it is absolutely chaotic. The main cook, his name is Igor. He has 2 women helping him, and then Varya is at one of the tables off to the side watching all of the chaos. There's yelling and back and forth and just absolute loud noises constantly. And so he shushes everybody, introduces them to Nina, and she decides to stay back and hang out with them. Once Roman leaves to go to his office to do work, Igor comes up to her, He can't speak English at all. He only speaks Russian. And so Varya is like the translator between the two of them. And long story short, she ends up staying in the kitchen and Igor teaches her how to make a piroshki. A similar thing is like a kolache, or it's just like a breaded thing with some meat in the inside of it. Usually it's meat. It can be like sweet or savory, but it's just a little breaded bun thing. They're really, really good. At least kolaches are. I've never had piroshki. After Roman is done doing his day at work, he realizes he hasn't seen Nina. Like, she was supposed to come and visit him at least once or twice, but she has been so wrapped up with cooking in the kitchen. He calls Varya to see where she's at. That's what she tells him. She's like, yeah, she's down here. Igor's teaching her how to cook. So Roman goes down there to meet them, and Varya tells him how Igor and Nina made 3 batches of piroshki. The first one were burnt, so they had to get thrown away. The second one, all of the men ended up coming in from running errands, and so they ate all that whole batch. And so now they're working on the third one, and he's like, WTF, like, why is she making a third one? Like, is that all for herself? And Varya's like, no, dummy, they didn't save any for you, so she's making some for you. And it makes him so happy. He's so flattered by this that he ends up picking her up, like, kind of bridal style, like pulls her down and kind of bridal style puts her on his lap and then wheels them back to his wing of the house, which is very, very cute. They get back to his wing of the house. They go take their separate showers, meet back in the kitchen for just like late night chit chat time. She ends up flinching again because he's back on crutches and bumped into her. So he, again, picks her up like she's a little tiny thing and throws her onto the counter so that they're eye level, which is very cute objectively. I just hate the little ooh-woo tiny girl thing. She's like, hey, you don't need to do that all the time. Like, I'm sure that hurts your knee. And he's like, don't worry about it, babe. You don't weigh anything. Does the physical therapy help? Yes, but it's slow. It took me 2 months to walk on crutches. 1 more to use them without any significant pain. Warren, the physical therapist, says that we'll try the cane in a couple of weeks and see how it goes. And after that, he doesn't reply right away, seeming to concentrate on pouring the orange juice. My knee's too fucked up. The cane is probably the best that I can do. By the way that he avoids looking me in the eye, I guess he doesn't like that outcome. You'll be sexy with a cane, Roman. Very aristocratic looking. And I'm not sexy now. And then it's a little flirty back and forth that ends with him telling her that she needs to bug Leonid's room sooner rather than later. And also that she needs to tell her parents about the marriage and that they'll go to dinner tomorrow with them. Like, he'll get a restaurant for them to go and have a talk at. Cut to Roman's perspective. They're at dinner with her parents. He is not a fan. He's not a fan of her mom because her mom is super judgy, rude to Nina. And then he's also not impressed with the dad, because the dad sold her out to move in with the freaking Russian mafia. So he's like, what kind of man is that? Like, you made a mistake. He should have died for it. Like, to sell out your daughter like that's like really messed up. So he just doesn't respect the father in any way. He gets a work call, so he has to go. He has to run away, and he leaves Nina there with her parents. Dimitri's going to stay behind, the bodyguard, so that he can drive her home afterward. The second that Roman leaves, her mom goes on to be an ableist piece of shit. Long story short, right? Where she's like, I'm just making sure that you married him for the right reasons. Like, you're not pregnant, right? And she's like, no, mom, obviously I'm not. And then the mom is like, well, I get it. I know why you fell for him. Like, he's sophisticated, he's handsome, he's rich. She's like, yeah, mom. So, like, what is your problem? And the mom says, he's in a wheelchair. Oh my God. So the dad is like, calls out the mom. He's like, WTF? Like, you can't say stuff like that. Same with Nina. She's like, dude, what the fuck? And the mom goes on and she's like, can he even walk? Like, what even happened to him? Blah, 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 blah. Nina gives him a halfway rundown and she says, hey, I love him. I married him because I love him, okay? Shut up. Like, I don't want to ever hear you speak badly of my husband again. Storms out of the restaurant, which, respect. In chapter 9, it's been 2 weeks of, like, relative domesticity. Is that how you say that word? Domesticity, right? Like, domestic life. She's just working on her art. She has an exhibition coming up where she needs to have a couple of pieces figured out. And so she's just been slowly working on that. And obviously Roman's been running an empire. It's kind of Roman Empire. So he's going to work all the time, and then they end up having dinner together. On this particular day, her order of her giant, ugly 14 lamps gets delivered, as does a chihuahua. She takes the dog back to her wing of the house and gets back to work on her art pieces that she owes for the exhibit. Her manager ends up calling her. His name is Mark. They have a little bit of chit chat. She calls him babe, and she's like, hey babe. He says, oh no, I know what that tone means. Like, what, how late are you? Like, are you actually going to get these pieces to me in time? She says, yeah, it'll be a little late. Like, it'll just take some time. Like, I won't miss the exhibit deadline though. It's just not going as quickly as he usually likes. And so she ends the phone call with calling him babe one more time and then saying like she can't send him any photos. When she hangs up the phone, Roman is behind her and he says, who the fuck is Mark? Like, after hearing this, she's like, no, he's my manager. It's not like that. And he's like, why do you call him babe? She goes on to say, everybody calls him babe, even his husband. And then that calms Roman down. And he invites her to go to lunch. When they're at lunch, they have a little bit of back and forth. It's a good time catching up. And he asks her why she got the dog. Where did this Chihuahua thing even come from? Like, they never talked about it. She says, well, technically it's not mine, and I kind of borrowed him. Or rather, I asked if I could dog sit for 2 weeks. He's like, WTF, why would you do that? And she says, well, you know how dogs are always running around the house, getting into rooms and hiding? Brando loves that, so I guess I'll be chasing him around the house quite a lot in the following days. Who knows where he'll end up? Maybe even in Leonid's room at some point. After dinner, Roman asks her to watch a movie together back at the house and hang out, and she says, yeah, I guess so. So they go and watch their movie, and he feigns leg pain so that he can lay down on her lap again. And it's pretty cute, not gonna lie. It was a little cutie thing. They're laying there before the movie starts, just kind of enjoying each other's company, and Roman's phone rings. He left his phone in his bedroom, so she runs up to go and get it for him. And when she hands it to him, he grabs her forearms to pull her closer. It's a small thing, but a huge thing that he's grabbing her forearms and not her wrists, right? A man pays attention. The bar is in hell, but it's fine. I was happy about it. He grabs the phone from her hands, throws it across the room, grabs her forearms, pulls her closer. They're face to face. She says, Roman, are you trying to kiss me? He says, yeah. And then they smooch. And then they bang. Right there. Happened so quickly. I felt like I got whiplash. And it happened so fast, and not relative to the story, right? Like, we are at the 46% mark when it happens. And so if we're talking from like a technical book layout, beat by beat breakdown of a story and how stories are traditionally laid out, we're at a very appropriate time for this type of scene to be happening. Like, whatever. I'm not getting into novel writing with you guys, but it's at a good point. The issue comes with the fact that the scenes themselves felt so rushed, and I felt this throughout the entire book, that it was paced correctly, but it went 0 to 100 in the way that, like, the buildup was solid, but the actual event description or the big scene description itself felt so rushed and like flown through. It was like very jarring for an otherwise well-paced book, and it was a little bit anticlimactic, like a little disappointing, where I was just like, oh man, like it could have been good. That's why ultimately I ended up giving this book 3 stars for that exact reason, because it's like, it's well written, the characters are fleshed out, it has good mafia stuff, like I really like it, but I also felt so let down by it in certain ways that just I couldn't give it that 4th star, man. Anyway, after they do it, she falls asleep on his chest. She wakes up to him click-clacking on the keyboard. He says he's got some work to do. She gets up, goes and takes a shower. She comes out. He's fully dressed in his like suit, fancy work attire, which means he's going to be leaving the house, and he says, I don't know when I'm going to be back. Don't stay up for me. She still tries to. She stays up until midnight trying to catch him, but he's busy doing work stuff. She finally falls asleep. She wakes up in the middle of the night to the sound of tires screeching and doors slamming. The guys are back. And when she looks out of the big window to look down and see them, she sees 2 of the men pretty much dragging a 3rd one between them that can barely walk. She starts freaking out because she doesn't know if it's Maxim or not, and she doesn't know what's going on. So she runs downstairs, follows the commotion. It's all in the kitchen. And the guys have one of the guys, I'm not giving you the names of all of them because it's like 12 different people get regularly brought up, and it's all Russian names that aren't 100% relevant. So it's like one of the dudes got stabbed and now he's like laid out on the kitchen table. The other guys are washing their hands and about to like stitch him up, and they've called a doctor. They have like an on-call doctor who will come and stay the night with said stabbed guy because they don't go to hospitals because obviously they're doing some shady stuff. This is the first time that she's ever seen any type of stuff like this, right? Like her dad is a freaking freaking real estate agent and she was in school to be an artist. Like, she's not used to this lifestyle whatsoever. And this is the first time that like the violence of it is like facing her directly. Maxim rolls up behind her, takes him a little bit longer to get out of the cars and get situated and stuff. And he says, hey, he's fine. He'll be okay. The doctor's gonna be here. We should go upstairs though. There's nothing else that we can do. They get up there. She immediately is like, WTF, dude, does this happen all the time? Like, is this like normal for you? A guy just got stabbed and you're acting like everything's okay. He says, I mean, it doesn't happen all the time, but kind of, sort of, like it is what it is. It's part of the job. She's like, that is so effed up. Like, I don't know how you can live such a lifestyle. He says, I don't really have a choice. It's just dangers of the job, baby. What do you want from me? She ends up asking him, where are we now, Roman? Like changing the subject, I guess. Just randomly. What do you mean? We had sex. Like, it wasn't something we planned for, Where do we go from here? I don't know. Where would you like to go? I'm not sure. It's late. Let's go to bed. Which one? Well, I'll be in mine, and you can choose which one it will be for you. Your bed or mine. She decides to sleep in his bed with him. He wakes up the following morning and he has physical therapy and then some like work stuff to go and do. So he's hanging out in his office talking to Maxim, and Maxim says, hey, boss, we're going to have dinner with the Albanians soon. We're going to have to invite them over and kind of reassure our commitment to the deals that we have with them. I think they're getting a little skittish. Roman pushes back because, one, he doesn't like the Albanians. They're crazy. And two, his words, not mine. And two, he says, Tanush, the lead Albanian guy, and I don't really get along anymore. We've had a little bit of a falling out. Maxim says, what are you talking about? I thought you guys were cool. It turns out Tanush had offered his daughter to marry Maxim so that they would be like even more bound together as mobs things. You know what I'm saying? Mafias? I don't know. I don't know any of these words. Crime organizations? Anyway, offered his daughter. Maxim turned it down. So there's a little bit of tension between them. Maxim is like, I wish you would have told me that sooner, dude. But okay, that reassures even more of what I'm saying, that like we need to have them over for dinner. So that's going to be the plan. Roman goes back upstairs, tells Nina about this, and they go shopping for yet another dress. They need to get her some dresses and jewelry and whatnot so that she can outdress the other wives that will be there, right? Like ultimately that's kind of what it's getting down to. It's like a flexing contest. So they go shopping and he spoils her absolutely rotten and they have more of a bonding day, and it's very, very cute. It's very spoiled. I love when a man spends his money on a woman. And at the end of the shopping trip, she's like, feels so adored by him. Like he's been complimenting her the whole time and been very protective of her and of men checking her out and all this other stuff. And there's just been this tension between them. And she says, what are we doing, Roman? This, you, me? I have no idea what to think about all of this. Then don't think. In chapter 10, my note says, oh, look, another spice scene. It's the following morning. He's back at physical therapy. This time, the physical therapist says, hey, I think you're ready to maybe use the cane. So he tries. He gets 4 steps in before it is like unbearably painful for him to even be standing anymore. And the physical therapist says, okay, hey, well, I think the next step then would be you have the under armpit crutches. Let's move you to the forearm crutches. That gets you in a little bit more of the right kind of position to start using a cane. Like that'll be an easier transition to the cane. Let's just use those. And Roman says, I don't like those. Why? They require some practice, but they're much more convenient to use because they look permanent. Internally, he's thinking, there, I said it. My greatest fear at the moment is that my knee is so fucked up that I'll be walking on crutches for the rest of my life. A cane, I can live with, but I don't think I could bear crutches. They won't be permanent, Mr. Petrov. However, they're a much better choice for transitioning to the cane from the underarm crutches that you've been using so far. All right, I sigh. When will I be able to ditch the wheelchair altogether? It depends. Your progress is much better than expected, and with enough practice, you should be able to manage using only the forearm crutches in a few weeks, but you should keep the wheelchair. You'll need it when we start practicing with the cane more extensively. Those sessions will put significant strain on your knee, and it would be better to use the chair in the following hour or two. Just get me to the bloody cane, Warren. I don't care what it takes. Just get me there. I will, Mr. Petrov. Now, let's try this forearm crutches, shall we? In Nina's perspective, he comes back from this therapy session, and she knows that it did not go well. She can just sense it in the air. They're in the kitchen together, having a little bit of other conversation that results in her saying, "You are one disturbingly sexy man, Roman." He breaks eye contact, looking down at his glass of juice. "Even with the crutches?" "Yeah, that therapy session did not go well." "Even with the crutches, Roman." I kiss him and make sure to bite his lower lip just a little. "What did Warren say?" "He said I'm doing fucking great." Based on the way he's gritting his teeth and the fact that the knuckles on his hands are white from how hard he grips the crutches, their opinion differ quite a bit. "I have to go. I'll be back by dinner." He places a kiss on my forehead and leaves. He's hurting, and it makes my chest hurt. I sit on the counter for a long time after he's gone, looking down at the floor. Perfect, I mumble to myself. Just perfect. The head of the Russian criminal syndicate, a drug dealer, a killer, and I managed to fall in love with him. Someone please just lock me up in a mental institution, because that's apparently where I belong. In chapter 11, it's just crime, mafia, drama stuff, where we are introduced to Sergei, who is the love interest in the third book. He is like totally extreme, lost his mind, like has so many explosives and guns and just like very violent in that regard, and just is getting worse and worse about the amount of ammunition and explosives that he brings to more and more meetings or more missions and operations or whatever, that he's not really allowed to go on them anymore. Like, it's becoming alarming. So that's what chapter 11 is. When he gets home the following day, I think, at some point, I don't know, he finds Nina and she's curled up in bed and she's feeling under the weather. They're supposed to have dinner that night with Tanush and the other Albanian guy and their wives, but she is completely and utterly sick, and she's not gonna end up going. She has a fever and she's puking, and she ends up just sleeping on the couch all day. So Roman ends up at the dinner by himself. It does not go very well. Man has the shortest anger fuse ever, and Tanush just speaks very crudely about Nina, hoping that he was going to be able to see her and confirm the rumors about how hot she is, and that now he's questioning if she's even real. And then he just gets super drunk and talking about other women in very derogatory ways in front of his wife, and it's just icky, and Roman doesn't like it, and he's preparing to stab the dude when Maxim steps out of the room to call Varya. Varya has been tasked with staying with Nina to make sure that she's okay. Calls Varya. He says, "Hey, I need to talk to Nina." Nina's put on the phone, and he says, "Hey, can you come down to dinner?" "To the dinner? Not for long, but yes, please." "Okay, I just need a shower and change, though." "How much time do you need?" 30 minutes, why?" "I can't distract him for that long. Can you make it in 15? "What's going on, Maxim?" There is a silence from the other end of the line, and then, "I think Roman's gonna kill Tanush, and we really don't need that now. I need him to focus on something else." He cuts the call. I look at the phone. I throw it at Varya's lap and run straight to the bathroom. She makes a dramatic entrance, right? She's super hot, wearing a dress that Roman told her to only wear for him. She's just trying to look distracting for him. She, puts on the platitudes with Tanush, tries and plays it off, asks him about the casinos that he owns, and Tanush listens to Nina's chattering and answers her questions. She's intentionally asking ridiculous things that makes everyone snicker from time to time, keeping the atmosphere light. When she questions if the casino's air vents are covered by cameras, everyone looks at her and bursts out laughing, and she explains that thieves in casino heists always get in through the vents in the movies. Dinner ends. Everybody survived. Nothing crazy, but obviously he's very pissed off at her when they get back up into the room, because he's super protective when she's in pain and stuff, and he's like, "You put yourself in danger, and you had a fever, and you weren't feeling good. What the heck, dude?" She distracts him. They bang again. Is anybody surprised? It's 3 days later. Her fever has gone away, she's feeling better, and Roman will finally let her out of his sight. Finally leaves her alone and goes back to work stuff, and she goes back to painting, only stopping to really use the restroom. When she gets finished with her 4th piece, she decides to take Brando around the house to play. She has a ball. She's playing catch with him kind of through the hallways as they're making their way around, and when they go past Leonid's room, one of the house cleaners is in there. So she just happens to throw the ball into said room. The house cleaner freaks out because she's scared of dogs. She rushes out of the room. Nina rushes into the room, finds the perfect outlet, puts the listening device into the outlet, and then here's Leonid running into the room. Luckily, she's able to play it off, plays the whole dumb blonde thing, grabs the dog, they run out of there. Chapter 12, her parents call asking about coming. Ultimately, they are concerned. The dad ended up telling the mom that the marriage was arranged, and so the mom wants to see her to make sure that she's okay. She ends up getting on the phone with her dad. She's like, WTF, Dad? Like, why would you even tell mom that? Like, now both of our lives are at risk. And also, I'm not pretending anymore. This isn't a pretend marriage. I love him. Nina, he's a killer. Are you crazy? Maybe I am, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that you will go and explain that to Mother. And if that doesn't sit well with the both of you, then I don't want to see either of you tonight. Cut to the exhibit thing itself. She's there. Roman's there. It's going great. Like, she's having a good time. Roman's really impressed with her artwork. They're flirting it up, and then her parents come over, and they say that they would like to purchase a piece, right? They're trying to be supportive of her, but when they asked, the guy said that the exhibit was already bought out, like all of her pieces has already been purchased. She's like, that can't be right, and runs over to go and talk to Mark, right? To Mark, her manager guy who owns the exhibit, blah, 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 blah. So it's her parents and Roman says, hey, go talk to that guy over there. I'm the one that bought all of the artwork. Just go tell him what piece you want and you guys can have it. Oh, he was an anonymous buyer. She comes back all ecstatic that somebody purchased all of her stuff, and he's very supportive, and it's very cute. While she's away, he also talks to her father and tells her father, the deal's off. I love her. You're not getting her back in 6 months. She's staying with me. Oh, okay. I guess they're both feeling the heat. They're just not telling each other quite yet. Kind of like that reveal a little bit. The last thing for them to do before they leave the exhibit is for her to show Roman the big guy, the big piece that she was working on. We round the corner and enter the separate section of the gallery. It's almost as big as the first, but there's only one painting showcased here. 3 spotlights illuminate it from above. The exhibition has just opened, so there are only 2 people in here. They're standing off to the side, which gives me the unobstructed view of the composition. Like Nina's other works, it's done mostly in grays and black, but the shapes are sharper here, more recognizable. The whole bottom part shows piles of rocks, parts of buildings and different debris. Clouds of smoke here and there are a dozen in white paint. Above the central pile of debris, a lone figure sporting huge devil horns looms. He's also painted in black with shades of gray and holds a huge sledgehammer in his right hand, as if he was mid-swing. The figure's face isn't visible because he wears a huge red helmet in the shape of a wolf's jaw, and the long red cloak floats behind it. It's magnificent. Why is he smashing everything? I ask, not able to move my eyes from the scene. Because he can, I guess. What's scattered around him? City ruins? Not really. It's a metaphor. For what? For my poor, demented mind, or whatever's left of it after you've skillfully demolished it, Roman. My head snaps to the side as I stare at Nina, processing what she just said. I need her to elaborate, but she just stands there looking at the painting. Explain. You're a clever man, Roman. Think about it, and you'll come to the conclusion yourself. She kisses me and then turns toward Mark, who's waving at her from the entrance, leaving me to stare at the painting in front of me. In chapter 13, Roman is in a sour mood. It's been 2 more weeks, and she thinks that it relates to not getting what he's after on the recordings from Leonid's room. And that night, he decides that they're going to go to one of the clubs that they own. She says, oh, okay, like, that's cool. And they get ready. They're about to leave. And he grabs his crutches. First time, no wheelchair tonight. Are you sure? I'm sure. I'm so happy for you, baby. Sorry, they use baby. I cannot read baby in books. I think I just hate pet names. I hate so many of these names in books that it just makes me cringe, and I don't know why. It gives me the ick so badly, and I don't know why. Anyway, she's excited for him that he's gonna be able to pull this off. They make their way through the house, him on his crutches. Every single person who sees him stops in their tracks and just is super, super surprised by what's going on. There's no doubt that by the time we come back, everyone will know the news. So they get to the club. They have a little bit of flirty back and forth. They're back in a booth all by themselves. It's a good time. He uses one crutch to stand, so they're in the booth. He stands with one thing, has her stand on the seat of the booth, and then that way they can kind of sway together, dance together, and they'll be eye level. I don't know. I don't know the physics of it. Don't look at me like that. I don't know, bro. I don't know what's going on. She asks, how's the leg holding up? It's fine. Don't worry. Roman? Yes? I have a confession to make. Is something bad? Yeah, It's a problem. It's a big one. Spill it, Nina. I'm in love with you, Roman. I close my eyes for a second and squeeze her tightly. It's like everything around me has stopped. Then we share the same problem. I say into her neck and feel her go still next to me. When I raise my head and look at her, her lips are slightly quivering and there are tears in the corners of her eyes. That 6-month deal, it's off, Nina. I don't care what we agreed on, you're mine now, and I'm not letting you go. Ever. Aww. She says, I'm not going anywhere. He says, promise me or I'm taking you home and tying you to the bed forever. She says, I promise. It's cute, okay? It's cute. I don't know why I'm being a dick about it. Like, it is objectively cute. There's just something about it that, I don't know. I can't put my finger on why I'm being rude about what's happening. Anyway, she can tell that he is in pain though, like his leg is hurting him. So she's like, hey, like, let's get out of here. Our car stops in front of the house at the same time as the other one, and Leonid gets out of the back seat. He turns to meet us, his eyes snapping to Roman, who stands next to me. It's dark, but there's enough light from the lamps to illuminate the shock on Leonid's face, which transforms to a look of pure hatred. He quickly schools his features into a pleasant expression and approaches us, kind of is making small talk with Roman. Roman is doing such a good job at pretending to be okay and continuing to walk, but she, being the dutiful wife, plays stupid and is like, she's like, Roman, we have to get up to the bedroom. I still have to do my skincare routine and it's gonna take at least an hour. So they go up there. The second that they get up to the bed, to their wing of the house and close the door, she runs to grab his wheelchair, gives it to him, goes and gets the pain meds, meets him back in the bedroom, piles up all the pillows under his knees, and then takes off his, like, undresses him so that she can see how swollen his knee is. It's like 2 times the size that it usually is. He's just in a lot of pain and he is not feeling great about it or about anything that night, like in regard to the whole crutches thing. And he says, Nina, I need to ask you something. Okay. If it ends up that the crutches are the best that I can do, will you leave? I open my mouth to say how idiotic the question is, but he puts his hand over my lips, silencing me. He's still not looking at me. I need you to think about this before you answer. Think long and hard about what that means. I'll never be able to run, no matter how much progress I make. Stairs will always be a problem for me. You might be okay with it for now, but you're young. You'll meet other men who are not damaged, men who don't have limitations. So if I have to use crutches for the rest of my life, and that's not something that you can accept in the long run, I understand. I swear I understand, and there won't be any hard feelings on my side, but if that's the case, I need to know now. We can keep going until it works for us, and when it doesn't anymore, well, we can each go our separate ways, but I need to know. I need you to be sure, Nina. Have you ever felt like I've had a problem with that, Roman? Like, so far, I mean? No, but you're an extremely talented actress, and from this point forward, I don't want that other woman, the one that you created for the purpose of our agreement. No more acting, no more pretense. Fair deal, okay then. I would love to see you run, or take the stairs 2 at a time. The cane is okay, I guess, and I'll be really happy if you come that far. If I could choose what I would love the most, it would be for you to go back to where you were before that bomb. But that's never gonna happen, Roman. I know this is hard for you and it tears me up inside. I would love to see you without the crutches, but only because I know that that's what would make you happy. That's the only reason. I love you and I want you to be happy. I want that for you so much. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter, with or without crutches. I love you the same, baby. Hey, baby, I don't know why I'm being such a bitch about it today. Even if you have to go back to using the wheelchair. I don't care. I don't give a fuck, Roman. The only thing I want is you. Can I have you, please? He's like, you already have me. Sorry, I need to not be mean about this. Why is this falling flat for me right now? Maybe I'm just in a bad mood. Maybe that's what's happening. Let me read that from the top. She says, the only thing I want is you. Can I have you, please? You already have me. He kisses the top of my head. There's only silence after that. He isn't convinced. I want to cry so damn much, but somehow I manage to keep myself together. Tell me, Roman, wouldn't you love for us to be able to have sex in the normal way? Because I would. I would love nothing more than to have you above me and to feel your body pressing against mine, pulling my hands above my head. Well, that's not in the cards for me for the foreseeable future, at least. Maybe forever. Is that a problem? Will you get bored with my issues, decide to swap me with a less faulty version at some point? A woman who won't involuntarily flinch when you approach her from behind unannounced? Or someone who won't have a panic attack when you forget and grab her wrist instead of her forearm? Do you think I haven't noticed that it's always Dmitri or Ivan that are coming with us? Never Kostya or Mikhail or Sergei, who are all as tall as you? Or how they either sit down or leave the room when I come in? When I went into the kitchen a few days after Kostya was stabbed, he dropped down into the chair so abruptly that I wonder if he didn't tear open his stitches. You had to instruct your men to fucking sit down when they enter a room so I wouldn't freak out. I'm sure it's tiring and frustrating dealing with my issues. Will you decide to have me replaced with someone less fucked up at some point? Christ, Nina. How can you even say something like that? Oh, so you don't like how that sounds, huh? Fuck you, Roman, I whisper, turn my face into his chest and let the tears fall freely. I feel his hand in my hair, his other arm coming around my waist, and he says, I'm so sorry. I love you so bloody much. I'm scared shitless that you might walk away one day. And then it turns into spice. I don't know what you want from me. I'm not gonna read it. I just talked about this, the book that I did last week by Rudex, The Reaper, where it's the idea that authors can't just have like a very emotionally driven scene and then move on to something else. It has to go into spice because that's easier to write, and then you can do anything after a spice scene. Anyway, after they hook up, he says, so you're staying for good? You're not getting rid of me even if you try. I'll never be able to find such a sexy husband again. We're closing this subject, Roman. Deal? Deal. But I need you to know one thing. When I find the bastard who hurt you, I'm going to kill him. No, you're not. I don't want to have anyone's death on my conscience. Please, I beg you, forget about it. Nina, please, we're closing that subject as well. You're not killing anyone for me. I can't live with that, please. When he doesn't reply, I take his face in my palms and press my forehead to his. You won't do that to me. You won't seek him out, and you won't kill him. If you love me, you won't make me bear anyone's death on my soul. Say you understand, Roman. There's silence. And then, okay. In chapter 14, his knee is doing a lot better the following morning, but he's thinking to himself that while Nina may not have a problem with me using crutches, I do. Whatever it takes, I'm getting to that damn cane because I want to be able to hold her hand in mine when I'm taking her to dinner or even just for a walk. There is a specific reason for me hiding the fact that my leg is getting better. I'm almost positive that seeing me walking will lead Leonid into trying something, and I want to catch his partner before that. It's been almost 5 months, and since I've failed to find out who the motherfucker is, it's time to nudge Leonid into action. Based on the way that he stared at me last night, I have a feeling that there's a nice surprise waiting for me on the recordings. So he listens to them. Halfway through the night, about 2 a.m., which is when they would have gotten back, he finds exactly what he was looking for. We need to try again. That bastard is walking, Leonid says. I'm not sure it works for me anymore, Leonid, answers Tanush. What? You can't change your mind now? Of course I can. I acted impulsively. I was mad because Petrov rejected my daughter and I wanted to make him pay, but he gets me good money. We had a deal, Tanush. You help me take him out of the picture and I make sure that you get a better cut when I take over. See, that's the thing, Leonid. Even if you give me a bigger cut, I doubt you can keep the business going. I've decided I don't want to risk it. I'm out. And the line goes dead. So, finding out that information, Roman has all of the evidence that he needs. He calls Maxim. Says, hey, where's Leonid? What's his schedule today? He's out. He's running errands, but he'll be back at 5 p.m. So he says, all right, Maxim, make sure everybody's out of the house by 4. He says, aye, aye, Captain. And they press on. And you can imagine what happens next. Nina gets sent out for a shopping spree thing across the city. She leaves at around 4. Maxim grabs one of his weapons, goes into Leonid's room, leaves the lights turned off, and sits in the recliner facing the door and just waits. When Leonid gets home, there's a little bit of confrontation, a little bit of pew pew happens, and dude is now unalived on the ground. Nothing too crazy happened there. The issue comes that as Roman is leaving the room, Leonid's phone is ringing. It's an unknown number. He answers it. He doesn't say anything. He just unlocks it. I found her. The voice from the other side says, prepare the money transfer. And that call disconnects. Oh, crap. Nina got sent across Chicago to a very specific boutique to pick out a vase for somebody's wedding or something. And while she's there, she only has one bodyguard. They were supposed to have 3, but she told them she only wanted the one. She didn't want all the extra guys following her around. So it's her and Ivan. She's picking out a vase. Suddenly, there's an ear-piercing noise. There's been a shooting. Ivan grabs her, rushes her through the emergency exit. She's in the alleyway. There's cars that are rushing by. Ivan's running around. There's a couple more gunshots. He eventually comes back, grabs her. They hop in the car, and she has a big old glass shard in her palm. He's like, WTF, why didn't you say something? She's like, didn't seem important at the time. There's some other stuff going on, dude. So he takes her to the hospital. She just wanted to have the doctor help her, the same doctor that helped patch up the other guy. But he's like, no, I have to take you to the hospital or boss is literally gonna unalive me. She says, okay. And they go. You can imagine the absolute chaos that the house is when Roman finds out that there's been a shooting and they don't know where Nina is because Ivan, her bodyguard, is not answering the phone. I imagine his phone got damaged along the way. They find out that she is at the hospital and she's in one of the rooms getting her hand fixed up. It didn't need stitches. Luckily, it just needed like a butterfly bandage and some good cleaning and stuff. But she hears Roman like screaming at the top of his lungs, freaking the frick out in the hospital lobby, trying to figure out where she is. She goes out there. He sees that she's fine. Everything's all happy. Roman just nods, passes his right crutch to Dmitri, and takes my hand and starts walking toward the exit. I take a look at our joined hands, but quickly look up and focus on the car parked some distance away. My eyes fill with happy tears as I adjust my pace to match Roman's. Oh, he's not using both of his crutches, guys. He's getting better. In chapter 15, it's been 2 more weeks, and she's like, hey, where's Leonid? Like, I haven't seen him in a hot minute. What's going on there? Roman tells her that he unalived the dude. She's like, you can't just tell me that over breakfast. He says, you asked. What do you mean? Like, it's kind of funny. But then he also says, like, he's the one that tried to unalive me. Like, he's the one that set up the bomb. Are you really going to have a problem with that? That I took care of it before he could hurt me? She says, no, I don't approve of killing people, but I can live with it in this case. Eventually, they end up going to the wedding that she went and bought the vase for in the first place. They go to the wedding. It's super boring. It's just girls gossiping about how hot Roman is and who the new wife is. And she's just playing dumb about it until finally Roman comes over to her. And then they just start making out because she's trying to prove a point. I don't know. It seemed a little petulant, but that's fine. In my note, I said, days later, I don't know. They're having a conversation. She asks if they can go out for dinner that night, and he says no. He has some business crap to deal with tonight. We leave in 20 minutes, and I don't know how long it'll take, but I should probably be back by like 10 or 11. Be careful, Roman. I watch her leave and think how strange it is to have someone waiting for me to come back from or worry about my well-being. It's sometime around 4 a.m. The gate slides to the side, and 2 cars park in front of the house. The men are exiting the cars, and I plaster my palms to the window looking for Roman. He exits last, and the way that he gets out of the car, painfully and slowly, tells me that he pushed his knee way too far this time. He gets upstairs like 10 minutes later. She's pissed off at him for pushing himself and also for not texting her. Like to let her know that he was alive or that he was going to be late. She's like, I know that you might not be used to this, but like, I need to know when you're going to be home. I was like, you don't think he was busy? It's not like he's like, you know, working as an accountant and there's like a cubicle farm and he can just like pick up his phone and text you whenever. Like, he was probably a little preoccupied. You know what I mean? Possibly. In chapter 16, it's an apology. Let's be real about what it is. She brought up about wanting to go to the club eventually at some point, and Roman immediately takes that as, okay, well, we're going tonight. Takes her to the club. They're there. It's a lot later in the night than they went last time, and so it's like jam-packed, crazy full. They're in their booth, though. They're flirting it up. They're hanging out. But she looks up, and she sees Brian, the reason that she's afraid of gigantic things. She sees him across the club and freezes up. Roman immediately clocks this shift in her attitude and shift in her body tensity and says, is that the man that hurt you? She looks into my eyes without blinking, her lips pressed hard into a line. It's him, isn't it? He'll pay. He'll pay dearly. I'll make sure of it, I whisper, and turn to take my crutches. Nina grabs my arm. No, promise me you won't kill him. You won't kill anyone because of me. So he says, okay. He doesn't even acknowledge what she said. Instead, he tells his guards in English to kick the guy out and describes him. And then in Russian, tells them to bag him, and he'll tell them what to do later. Uh-oh. You know the infamous 3rd act breakup is about to happen. Because inevitably, Roman does actually end up unaliving Brian. He takes him, he plays it off with Nina. You know, they go home, they go to sleep together. He gets back up in the middle of the night after he sees that she's sleeping and goes down to the basement where they have Brian tied up, and they go on to do some very horrible things to him and unalive him. In the middle of that, though, in the middle of the unaliving, Nina wakes up from a nightmare and she can't find Roman. He's not in his office, he's not in the gym, he's not in bed, she can't find him anywhere. So she's wandering around and she sees a door open to the basement. The basement was the one place in the house where Roman said she could never ever go. He never told her why. He just said, you can't go down there. It's the one off limits place. The door's open and there's a light on. So she goes down. She hears some muffled screams. She opens a door. She sees exactly what you would expect from what I've described. Roman and Brian are in there. They're, stuff's happening. She freezes. She starts screaming. She freaks the frick out, runs upstairs, locks herself in a bathroom. And hey, man, between this and then I just read Serpentine Valentine. It's like the Dark Academia Sapphic Medusa book. It was really, really good. But the whole point of that book, not spoiler alert, this is just a general summary. The main female character of that book was AR'd by a professor at her university. The professor and the president of the university go on to try and cover it up. The whole book is about her getting revenge on the professor and the president. Okay, it's very good, and the whole thing is revenge, and then this was revenge. And some solid abusers getting abused lately that I have been consuming, and I love that for me. Sometimes violence is, in fact, the answer. Anyway, she's locked in the bathroom. She's telling Roman to leave her alone. Eventually, he has to send up Varya. So Varya comes up, and she's like, oh, dear child, blah, blah, blah. She says, I don't care. Give me a taxi. Get me out of here. With the intent of going home. The next morning, Roman is working in his office and there's a knock at the door and it's Dmitri, the lead security guy. There's a taxi waiting up front. Varya said that Nina Petrova is leaving. She is. Should I stop her? I think about it and I shake my head. No. Send 2 men to follow her discreetly. Have them call me when she reaches her destination. Do you want them to stay there or come back here? They will stay. I want 2 men on her constantly. Arrange the shifts. Tell them to make sure that they're out of sight. Oh. So in chapter 17, it's been 4 days since Nina has left. And he thought that by now she would have come back. He was like, okay, she'll go to her parents' house overnight. She'll get over it and she'll come home. Not the case. When he found out that she went back to her actual apartment where she lived, he knew that she wouldn't be coming home soon. So 4 days later, he's getting a little, I don't want to say tired of waiting because he's a little bit more understanding of that than that description gives it credit for, but that's what it is, right? He gets tired of waiting. Has the driver take him to her apartment. He texts her that he's outside. She says, leave me alone. We're over. What the fuck am I supposed to do with this? Should I go up there and break down her door and make her listen to me? Like, what would I even say? There's no way to take back what's been done. I stay in the car in front of her building well into the night. I finally tell the driver to take me home. It's too soon. I'll give her a few more days to cool down and then we'll speak. 2 days later, a package arrives, and it's the self-portrait that she promised him, and he realizes that she's not coming back. In chapter 18, it is time for the divorce letters. She cries her way through finally signing them. Roman keeps sending them back, screaming at his workers that she's not getting the divorce. He sends back the letters with red ink on his signature block that say no. The next time she sends another batch of divorce papers, he sends it back and the corner has been burnt off where his signature would be. The third time he receives the letters, he calls her and he says, I'm not giving you a divorce. You left me. That was your choice. This is mine. Do you want to know what I want, Roman? Do you even care? He sighs. What do you want, Nina? I want at least a remotely normal life, Roman. I want somebody who won't decide to play God and serve his own justice, killing people off that he doesn't like. I don't want to witness that. Brian was a bastard, but I didn't want him killed because of me. I never wanted that on my conscience. I asked you, I begged you to leave it be, and you gutted him like a pig. I still have nightmares about that night, Roman. I can't live in your world where I'm fucking terrified every time that you arrange some deal or whatever. I thought that I could, but I can't. Do you have any idea what it did to me to sit at the window the whole night while you were out on business? I imagined you in a ditch somewhere, and I waited for them to bring you back either shot or dead. But most of all, I can't live with the possibility that someday you'll decide to gut someone else because he looked at me in a funny way or whatever. I can't. It's tearing me apart from the inside out. What you did to Brian, it's eating me up. This guilt, knowing that someone is dead because of me. I can't eat. I can't sleep. I keep seeing his body covered in blood. Blah, 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 blah. God, Roman, I can't unsee all of that blood on your hands. All he says is, okay. The next day, she receives the papers with his actual signature and a letter at the top that says, if you ever need me, you have my number. If you don't want to have anything to do with me, call Maxim or Dmitri. I've instructed them that in case you ever call, that they are to do what you ask and not share it with me. Please call Varya from time to time. She misses you. Take care. And she starts sobbing. Chapter 19 is 2 weeks later, and Roman starts going out on the actual missions, like with all of the like foot soldiers and whatnot, and doing all of the dangerous stuff, like putting himself in very, very bad situations and just being super, super reckless. In chapter 20, from Nina's perspective, it's another month later. She's depressed. She's had to reverse her sleeping schedule. So like she's awake all night and sleeps during the day because of the nightmares that she's having from seeing Brian that way and having just nightmares in general and missing Roman and not having anything to do with it, that it's easier having those during the day, right? She's dyeing her hair because she doesn't really have much control over her life, so she's dyeing her hair different colors like every 2 weeks, and she's thinking about skipping town and a bunch of stuff. If from Roman's perspective, he calls one of the people that are set to like watch her apartment. What has she been doing? She changed her hair again. It's blue now. Any men? No one as far as we could see. When a man enters the picture, and it will happen eventually, make sure that I never find out, Maxim. No. Chapter 21, it's another month later. He's on a very, very dangerous mission with Sergei this time, and I felt like I was reading a Michael Bay film. It was just like explosions upon explosions and gunfire and fast cars and like shooting tires out and stuff. It was like crazy. It's a whole thing. He almost dies. And from Nina's perspective on that day, she hasn't been answering her mother's phone calls for like weeks now. So her mom shows up at her apartment and is like, hey, I wanted to check on you. Mom takes interest in her artwork, comments that it looks a little different than usual. She's like, it's dark, but usually you have a pop of color. There's no color in your artwork anymore, honey. Back and forth. She eventually tells her mom that she's just depressed because her and Roman got divorced. And she says, what happened between you two? I thought you were staying together. I walked in on him gutting Brian after he blah, 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 blah. He killed him? Yes. She's silent for a moment. He loves you. Yeah, he does, but sometimes love is not enough. You knew who he was, Nina, and you still fell in love with him. You can't forgive him? He would do it again, Mom. I can't live with another death on my conscience. This one is already too much. Does that make me a hypocrite, that it never bothered me what he did or who he killed before? It's how his world works, but not yours. I turn toward the canvas and pick up my brush again. I have to finish this one by tomorrow. So the mom gets up to leave. She kind of gives up on the conversation. She's like, okay, just please answer my call next time. But the mom stops in the doorway and she says, I was wrong about your husband. Your father would never kill a man because of me, you know? Well, that's a good thing, Mom. No, honey, it isn't, she says and leaves the apartment. Which, hey, I kind of love that. I mean, not like literally, but like, you know. It's a week later, chapter 22, last chapter of the book. You see what I mean about this whole 0 to 100 thing? Like, obviously, I'm summarizing it greatly for you, but it just, I can't put my finger on what was missing. Anyway, I'll finish what I was saying. A week later, Varya calls Nina to come over. Immediately, she knows that something is wrong because Varya sounds very, very concerned and ends up telling Nina about Roman's dangerous missions that he's going on and says that he even got shot a couple of weeks ago. It was just in the upper arm. Like, he's fine. He's a little messed up, but he's good. But begging Nina to come back. She's like, hey, he really does love you. And like, she's like, you just don't understand his reasoning. So she explains it. Varya gives the history of Roman and why he is the way he is and why he did what he did. Let me read this to you. Roman's mother married his father when she was only 18. Lev, the father, was 20 years older than her, and he was a really bad man. I came into the house with Nastya, the mother. I had known her since she was a baby, and I hated seeing Lev mistreating her from the moment that she arrived. He beat her, even when she was pregnant with Roman. When Roman was 5, he started confronting his father on purpose so that Lev would take out his anger on him instead of Nastya. It worked for a few months until it didn't. A few days before Roman's 6th birthday, he hit her so hard she fell down the stairs. She passed away. Roman witnessed it, and they think that that's also how he unalived his first wife as well. He's just an incredibly violent man. So she stayed as the housekeeper, right? Even though she came there for Nastya, she ends up staying there as the housekeeper so that she can kind of protect Roman and support Roman. She always tried to stay out of Lev's way. One day, he came home incredibly worse than he had ever been. We find out in book number 2, this is not a spoiler in any way, it's revealed in this book, that he's coming back from doing some really, really horrible things to Mikhail, right? We find out about how he got as physically scarred and damaged as he is because of Roman's father on this day. Dude is still pissed off about things. He comes back. He is about to unalive Varya when Roman comes in. Roman unalives his dad to protect Varya. Good God, right? So she says, we all have some kind of trigger, child. Roman saw that man as a threat to you, and he neutralized it. I'm not saying he did the right thing. I'm just trying to make you understand. He knows now that what he did hurt you, and believe me when I say he would never do anything intentionally that could inflict any kind of pain on you. He's madly in love with you, and I think when you left, it broke something in him. He doesn't care about anything anymore. Like, he's doing reckless things on purpose. He got shot last month, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I guess so that's when she tells him about getting shot. She's like, this MFer doing reckless stuff. I can't believe he would do this. So they rush back to the house. She goes immediately to Roman's office. She stands in the doorway and she says, I hear you got yourself shot. He says, and that concerns you. How? I just wanted to make sure that you're okay. Why? He stands up with a cane and walks over to her, stands in front of her, kind of cages her in on the doorway. She still doesn't say anything. He says, I asked you a question. I need an answer. She doesn't say anything. She just kind of starts to cry. She places her palms on his cheeks. He says, you left me. You fucking left me. I know. I'm sorry for hurting you. I wish that I could turn back time and do things differently. I can't. And that's a fact. But I'm not sorry for killing that bastard. That's another fact for you. I'll ask again. Why do you care if I was shot? Because I love you, Roman. I love you, and I can't bear the thought of you getting hurt. You will end this fucking war that you've started. You hear me? I don't care how you do it, but it will end, or so help me God, I'm going to kill you myself. He doesn't say anything for a few moments, staring into my eyes with his fingers clutching at the back of my head. Marry me, he says, and I'll stop the war. What? One of the Goodreads comments quoted that section, and they said, it was along the lines of like, book was mid, but this line had me bricked up. Which is the funniest thing I think I've ever heard in my life. That's kind of hot though. Marry me and I'll stop the war. Shut up. In the next part, he sees that she still has her wedding rings on, so he takes them off of her finger. She starts to protest. He's like, you never took these off. She says, I couldn't. So that's a little reassuring to him. So I ignore the screaming pain in my right leg and I lower my left knee a bit. It's not the exact pose that I envisioned, but it's the closest thing on one knee that I can manage. I raise the rings in front of her and he asks if she will marry him. She says, yes, obviously. She's like, you're not going to get it the cheap way this time, though. I want the frills and the dresses and the flowers. She does acknowledge, she's like, you're blackmailing me into marrying you again. And he's like, yeah, so what? You kind of like it. What are you going to do about it? You still love me. She says yes. They have a little bit more chit chat about things. And she says, how will you stop the war with the Italians? That's who he picked the fight with, by the way. Like, that's who they've been, like, blowing each other up with the Italians. He says, the usual way. Someone's going to get married to a sweet and docile Italian girl. How romantic, and who will be the lucky groom? And that is in book number 2. It's Mikhail. He ends up marrying the eldest daughter of the Italian guy, the Italian boss. And it's a very cute book. Not gonna lie, I enjoyed it. It was another 3-star. I don't know if I would ever give any of these more than a 3-star, but I'll finish discussing that in a second. So that's what book number 2 is. They go up to have another spice scene, of course. Afterward, they're about to fall asleep, and he says, hey, I have a confession to make. She says, can't this wait till morning? He says, no, it can't. And he says, hey, I know that I'm using the cane now, but I still have to use the crutches in the morning. Like, it still hurts really bad in the morning. She says, that's it? Like, that's what you had to tell me? That's the big reveal? I thought you had something serious to say. Because he's still all worried about it. Oh, Nina, you don't understand. It won't get any better than this for me. I'm sorry. Yeah, you said that already. I know. I saw your crutches and deduced as much myself, baby. And I couldn't care less. So, you didn't kill anyone while I was away? I thought that's what you were going to confess. I decided to plead the fifth and wisely keep my mouth shut. Roman? She narrows her eyes at me. I sigh. I off to Nush, okay? I knew it. She shakes her head, but he was the one who set up the bomb with Leonid. Nina regards me, scrunches her nose, and then nods. He deserved it, she says, and resumes her position on my chest. Just please don't kill anyone else because of me. I listen until her breathing evens out. When I'm sure she's sleeping soundly, I take her small hand from my chest and place a kiss to the tips of her fingers. I will be killing anyone who dares to hurt you, I whisper. I'll just make sure you don't find out next time. And then we go into the epilogue. And I'm not reading it because I don't read epilogues. Again, you're more than welcome to read it on your own. If you have Kindle Unlimited, it's available on there. Or if you want to purchase it, obviously. So, all in all, pretty short read. I think it's like 250 pages. I loved the representation of like the PTSD aspects and like kind of ongoing issues with that, long-term issues, I feel like aren't represented very well or very often for that duration of time in these types of books. I can't speak to the representation of a disability, or to have something happen later in life and become disabled, and the thoughts toward that and handling that situation. I think it was well done from my perspective, but obviously, like, that's not my call to make. It just felt well done. I loved that he was never abusive toward her. Obviously, there's like a dynamic there, a power imbalance, if you will, because she doesn't have a choice in anything that's happening. But it's also inherently kind of what you get into when you read mafia books, right? There's a level of that that's expected. But he was such a gentleman. He was so kind to her the entire time. He was very sweet. I loved that. I liked the crime aspect. I almost felt like, I would hate to compare anything to The Wire, but you know how in The Wire, it was like 3 absolutely distinct storylines that just like kind of had some characters that interconnected them, but it felt like you were in like different worlds entirely. That's what this felt like. I got like complete mafia world, or I got complete out of mafia world where Nina lived. And then the couple times when it would like cross over was when the drama happened, or when there was like interesting plot movement, that I really enjoyed that piece of it. And it was almost like Roman himself could be in either one of those situations. And it like, I don't know, I just felt like it was 2 good separate stories tied together, rather than a romance story with a little bit of mafia stuff talked about and sprinkled in there. It felt like it was its own developed side thing. I hope to God that makes sense. Also, obviously, The Wire is like the best fucking show on television ever, so like I hate using that as a comparison, but I can't think of any other like distinct storytelling things, multiple storylines at once off the top of my head other than that. So for those reasons, I gave it a 3. Like I said, I docked points for the pacing of it and the rushedness of it at certain points where I was just like, oh, you really could have sat in that moment a little bit longer, or like given a little bit more justification. I think it is because it was 250 pages. I think the author could have added another 100 and I would have been happy with it if that 100 would have been used to flesh out those rushed aspects. I just can't pinpoint what exactly felt off, but something was off. Obviously, I enjoyed it though. I've continued reading the series and it's a good read. It's just not like a phenomenal read, so I'm not trying to put it down in any way. You know what I mean. I think that's all I have to say. Had a good time. I will continue reading things by this author. I think that they could write a 5 out of 5 for me. I think they could write something that would be a 5-star read. I just need to find it. So I'm digging through their catalog currently. That's my side fun project. Now, if you made it to the end of the video, I thank you so much. I appreciate you guys as always. What video am I doing? I think I'm gonna try and do Verity by Colleen Hoover. We're gonna do a fan fave. I need to do like a monthly Colleen Hoover book. I think I'm gonna do Colleen Hoover. I'm gonna work on my classic book review here pretty soon, so I'll get that out to you guys. We're gonna do Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck first, and then I have a list of other ones that I want to start doing videos on. Those will come out pretty soon, and otherwise, we'll see. I don't think I can help myself. I think I have to read the next book in the Runix series, in the Reaper Darkverse bullcrap thing. I don't think I can help it, guys. I just need to know what happens. And now, somebody brought up a really good point. They commented on Spotify that now I have to read the next one because the next book is about Dante and Amara, and so I can figure out if the bad writing is really because of Homegirl's high IQ repetitive behaviors, like Runix said in book number 1, or if it is genuinely bad writing. Like, what's the excuse for the bad writing in book number 3 if we're not talking about, oh my god, what is her name? I don't know, Homegirl from book 1. If we're not talking about her anymore, you would expect the writing to improve, right? Supposedly, maybe, if the logic that we were provided is correct. I was like, oh shit, you're right, I actually have to read this now, huh? So I don't think I can help myself. There's some stuff for you guys to look forward to on the channel. If you have any book recommendations, either of good books or book recommendations, derogatory, I would love them. Leave those comments down below. If you have any thoughts on this book, I would love to hear about them. And otherwise, like, comment, subscribe, you know the deal. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.